Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about Mistborn Era 1, one of the most hyped up book series I have ever read. I've heard a lot about it here on BookTube, and I finally took the dive. It's such a hyped up book series, in fact, that I've only ever had one person say something negative about it to me. Now, I may be one of the last people to finally get around to reading and reviewing this series, but in case you haven't done it yet yourself either, let me tell you just a little bit about it. We follow Vin for the most part. She's our most main point of view character, and she is special. In this world, people can consume metals. There's a few different metals, and each metal gives that person with the ability to eat them a different kind of power. And what makes Vin special is she is able to consume all of the metals and use all of their powers. This series was written by the one and only Brandon Sanderson. It is comprised of the 3 books, The Final Empire, which is now basically only referred to as Mistborn. I think they recently just did a reprinting, and I believe they took The Final Empire off of the book completely. I think it is now only being referred to as Mistborn, so you'll mostly hear people call that first book Mistborn. The second book, The Well of Ascension, and the third and final book, The Hero of Ages. I've referred to this as Era 1 a few times, and in case you don't know, this is going to be a series that's made up of, I believe, 4 eras. Era 2 just finished up a couple weeks ago, and so I'm just a little bit behind there, but there should be 2 more that Brandon is going to release at some point here in the future. Let's start with my rankings before we get into more of the review section of this. I have The Final Empire as my favorite book. In second place, I have The Hero of Ages, and in last place, I have The Well of Ascension. The Final Empire is also currently my top 4-star read of the year, so we'll see if it can hang on to it. I don't know how long it'll be able to, but we'll see if it can. I also just wanted to mention that my favorite character is Sazed. I don't know how popular or unpopular that opinion is, but he was definitely my favorite character throughout. He went on a really interesting journey, especially from where he started in the first book to where he ended up in the last book. So let's start with the good. And I have a couple rapid fire things I just want to mention that are overall great throughout it that I don't want to dive too deep into because I am going to try and keep this as spoiler free as possible. So some of those rapid fire things that I have are the magic system, some of the characters, and I do say some of the characters for a reason, the writing style, the mysteries, the creatures, the endings to every single book individually is fantastic, and the conclusion to the trilogy as a whole is also fantastic. And Brandon Sanderson is not afraid to have consequences for actions, and that's something that really matters to me. When plot armor's a little too heavy, it takes me out of the reading experience just a little bit. Now let's talk about what I thought was good about book 1, and I already mentioned this quickly in the rapid fire section, but I do just want to mention the magic system again. The magic system that we experience in book 1 through the eyes of Vin is fantastic. Since we're looking at it through somebody who has no experience with it, we learn with them as they go, and that's a really great way to do it. It makes it not feel like a giant expedition dump every time. It makes sense that she's learning the information when she is and how she is. She has somebody who's teaching her, and so we get that same kind of learning experience that she does, and that's a really big positive because if not, this could really feel like reading a textbook. The Final Empire also definitely relies on some found family tropes. Vin is definitely an outcast when we start this book, and she's brought into the crew. And by the end of the book, you can really tell the connection that everyone has together and how she feels towards everybody. It's one of those things that if found family is for you, you're really going to like it. And if found family isn't really for you, it's not going to hurt your experience at all, but you probably won't connect with it as much as I did as someone who really does like that trope. Speaking of that found family, I would be remiss to not mention Kelsiver in this section of the good. He's such an interesting character and has had a really interesting journey to get to where he is. He comes up with this master plan on how to take over the Lord Ruler, and he really believes that he can do it. And so having that perspective of somebody who is still a very flawed person when you really get down to the root of it is a nice lens into this world. And I just want to talk about the world itself, especially in this first book, while we're learning everything. Just seeing the government that has been set up and the way people are forced to live in this world is just fantastic. It really makes you feel immersed, and you get a view from a multitude of different societal views on how they are experiencing life. From the street peasants to high aristocrats to kind of their priest level people, you really get to see the full gambit of what is going on in the continent. Now moving on to book 2, The Well of Ascension, the thing that stood out to me most about this book was the character developments. We really see characters having to step out of their shell and become something on their own. They need to progress and kind of step away from the childhood stages they're in, and it's a really fascinating journey. While this is my least favorite book of the trilogy, it is by no means bad. I did give it 4 stars after all, and this character development is really the thing that I am going to remember the most about this book. If you are into some political theorizing, you are also going to enjoy this. I kind of like it and kind of don't. It's kind of a mixed bag with me. I am going to put it into the good section because I think it's really well done, while we have people debating what the best political views should and how those policies should be put in place to govern a large group of people. I also want to mention quickly, there's a creature that we learn about slightly in book 1 called the Koloss, and in book 2 you get to learn a little bit more about them, and I just thought they were super fascinating. They really felt like something from a completely different world, the way they're described, and that really piqued my interest in how they were created. The end of this book, I think, is the strongest part. I saw a couple reviews saying that book 3, the ending is supposed to blow your mind and everything, and while it does, I think that the twist at the end of The Well of Ascension is its strongest piece, and it really is a good twist. The expectations it sets for you and how it then executes on those expectations is just fantastic. It's not something that I've experienced too many other times in my reading, so that's definitely its biggest positive for The Well of Ascension. Moving to book 3, it is a little hard to talk about it without spoilers, but I will do my best to do that. The thing I liked most about book 3 are the different points of views we get. We get to experience the world through a couple different characters' perspectives, and I think that was a really strong addition to this book. It let us see things that we wouldn't have seen otherwise, and really started to piece the world together, and the mysteries that have been working the entire time in the background and that we've been trying to figure out, we finally get answers to. And that's such a rewarding payoff, especially at the end of a trilogy like this. Obviously, I can't say what those are, but just know that I think they pay off extremely satisfying. And when you look back, it makes me almost want to do a reread, because the seeds are planted from the very beginning of book 1, and they finally are paid off here. And when you look back, you see everything that was supposed to happen and how it all aligned, and it was just thought out so well. Power scaling is normally something that people talk about in video games and anime specifically, but I also did want to mention here because I think the power scaling is done really well. We have characters who are supposed to be becoming more powerful, and they do, but at no point does it feel like they've reached a level until they're supposed to that is just not fit for this world. They progress in a way that makes sense, and it feels good in the story. I mean, we want to see characters get familiar with their abilities and become stronger, but not get to a point where it just makes them so strong and overpowered that it's not fun. Like in a video game, when you finally unlock everything and you can just basically one-hit everything, you know, it kind of loses some of its charm. It never hits that level here, even towards the end of the book. Everything stays in at least a somewhat decently level playing field, which is nice because it could have gone a completely different way and had characters just on a completely different level than they even reached here. I did say that the Well of Ascension's twist and ending there I thought was better than this book's ending, but I do think that the ending here is still very well done. You hit every point that I felt like was needed, and all of the mysteries that I was really thinking of at the time got revealed in a way that made sense. And so while I did like the twist and stuff at the end of book 2, this is an absolutely wonderful end to the trilogy, and that has to go into the positives here. Now let's talk about some of the bad, and we'll go ahead and start back with book 1, The Final Empire. There are a few things I didn't like. There are a few character decisions that just weren't my favorite. I don't know how the story would have progressed if they didn't make those decisions, but at the same time, I still didn't really like them. And I kind of hinted on this before, but the way the medals are explained can definitely feel like you are reading out of a textbook if it bothers you. I have a friend who, as soon as they got to the part where they started explaining how the metals work together, she instantly put down the book and has not picked it up since because she says it's like reading a textbook. So if you may be a little sensitive to that, I could see that being a little jarring. I will also say Brandon Sanderson has a little bit of Robert Jordan in him, where he will repeat the details of a magic system or something multiple times. If you've read The Wheel of Time, you know exactly what I mean, where you just kind of get that constant refresh so that you never are forgetting how anything works, but at some point you're like, I've got it, I understand. So that can rub some people the wrong way. Now, for book 2, The Well of Ascension, I do have a little bit more here to say. This was my least favorite book, and the reason I disliked it is probably something that bothers some people more than others, and that's the young adultness of it. And when I say that, I mean there are some young adult tropes that are used in this book that just rub me the completely wrong way. I don't want to say what it is because I don't want to give away any spoilers, but just know there is a young adult trope that gets used that I just hate. It took me out of the story a little bit, and that is going to be something that's completely subjective to me. Just because I am sensitive to it doesn't mean you will be. And I also don't want this to sound like I don't like young adult or I think it's bad. One of my favorite series ever, the Aurelian Cycle, is technically a young adult series, and I love it. So don't take that as a shot towards the young adult genre. That's not what I want it to seem like. And while I say that I don't like the way the trope happens and is used, it actually becomes a really important part of some character growth and how the story progresses. So I'm not sure how that could have been taken out and we still reach this same point, but it's just one of those things where if it doesn't click with you, it doesn't click with you, and unfortunately for me, it didn't. My biggest issue with book 3, The Hero of Ages, is a character I just never really connected with or cared about became a pretty central figure in this story. It felt like it came a little bit out of left field with this character all of a sudden becoming so important. And they're super important. Without them, the plot doesn't move forward in the way that probably makes sense. But I don't know how it could have been done differently, because huge plot details for how the world works are explored through this character. I just guess I wish it was somebody else, or I don't know. That character just never really cared, still don't really care what happened even after the fact. So that is one of my biggest issues. The other one is, well, there's a little bit of, are we the baddies? They kind of waffle on, are we doing the right thing over and over again? And it can be a little bit tiresome. At some point, it's like, you are definitely the good guys. Are you maybe having to do some bad things? Possibly. You are still the good guys. You are absolutely still the good guys. Compared to what you were up against, you are absolutely the good guys. And so that did wear on me just the tiniest bit. Obviously, I'm bringing it up in this section of the video. But yeah, it rubbed me the wrong way. It was so clear to me that anybody in that position would still see themselves as the good guy. And I know part of these characters that are taking part here are supposed to question themselves. You know, they want to make sure they're doing the right thing, and it's part of their character. That's fine. But at some points it was just like, oh, come on, guys, you are doing the right thing. Don't double guess it. Like, just move forward. You're going to have to do some hard things when you're trying to accomplish what you're trying to accomplish. Do it. And that is the good and the bad that I wanted to point out for the trilogy. Now, the title of this video is, was it worth it? Was it worth the read? And the answer to that question for me is yes, absolutely it is. If you have not yet read this trilogy, I definitely recommend adding it to your TBR, and adding it soon. It's really fantastic. I don't know if it's a stop everything you're doing right now and read, but it's definitely should be on your next month's TBR. If you have any thoughts about Mistborn Era 1, let me know down in the comments. I'll go ahead and say we can talk about spoilers in the comments. Just go ahead and, type out spoiler and hit enter a couple times so that it hides your comment in case somebody who hasn't read yet decides to take a look down there. But I'd love to have some conversations about, characters you love, characters you hated, your favorite moments, that kind of stuff. I have a lot to say, and I think, we can talk about it in spoilers down below. But that is all for me on this review of Mistborn Era 1. I hope you enjoyed it, and have a good one.